Boom, we are live, Joey.
Welcome. Own your gifts.
Yeah,
Episode 3.
episode 3. Wow. How's Jersey Sydney treating you, Joey?
Really good. The sun was out today. Things are warming up. I'm excited for the new season to come in.
What season is it?
Winter.
You're coming into winter now.
We're coming out of winter.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But in March we got slammed with snow. So the sunshine, and we're starting to see, when I'm outside, I'm starting to see little blossoms on the trees. So I know it's right around the corner.
Beautiful. Guys, if you are joining us for the first time, I want to say thank you. If you're watching us on the replay, I would like to say thank you from Joey and myself. And also, I'm wondering, let us know where you're watching from. It's a wonderful way for us to sort of explore how far our reach is getting. And also, last week, Joey and I think we left the show with a couple of tips around gratitude. Let me know this, right? Have you paid somebody a compliment today? Drop your comments and let us know. And today, Joey and I are what are we talking about today, Joey?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about our journeys through decades of addiction, and more importantly, our thoughts, feelings, and emotions leading up to us picking up a drink for the first time, in hopes that maybe we could spare somebody who's about to pick up that drink or a drug. So we're going to try to talk about prevention. It's a topic that it's often brought up to me as somebody who lived a life of drug addiction and who had most of the consequences associated with making choices like that and living a life like that, short of long-term prison or death. As to why did you turn towards alcohol and drugs for your solution to life, and what may have prevented you from doing that? And I had never thought of it because I never knew any other way. I spend a lot of time working on my own recovery, and being of service to others, helping them help themselves, to stay away from a drink or drug a day at a time, and grow and contribute beyond themselves with a life of recovery. But prevention is something that I really don't have any experience with. So I think that tonight we can, give people a peek under the kimono, so to speak, of our thinking, feelings, and emotions as alcoholics and drug addicts at the time of picking up a drink, and seeing maybe that can translate into some tools or tips to help prevention, because this is a serious disease with serious consequences, and it seems to be getting worse.
It's life or death, often, isn't it, Joey? And especially within that community of addiction and alcoholism. Of course, there's your social drinking and social using, but when we're talking addiction, that obsession and compulsion and heavy drinking, it's often life and death. And you raise an interesting question, because I don't know if it's that first one. How do you prevent that first one? Because, well, this is just where my head went. I don't know. It was the first one that was actually the problem for me. It was that when I started to sort of get out of control. I wonder if should we be trying to prevent the first one, or is there an important step that takes place a little bit down the track where we sort of go, oh, this. But I do remember, and I remember for me when I first picked up heroin, it was like. And I'd used every other substance till then, but I remember thinking, wow, this is it. So, yeah, interesting topic. And I hope we can help certainly young people prevent themselves from taking that path to addiction, and alcoholism.
Yeah, I like to. I was asked by somebody that was interviewing me in the recently. And he's a guy who part of what he does is help to educate young children in how to to become more aware of how the human mind works, and to understand their minds more. And so a lot of times by not understanding the human mind and not having tools to communicate, we turn towards other behaviors to soothe that. And so he asked me, when did I pick up my first drink? What was I thinking when I did? And so basically, I picked up my first drink when I was like 10 or 11. However, there's also certainly a genetic component to all this, which is another conversation. And alcoholism and drug addiction did run in my family, but not my immediate family, like not my mother and not my father, but it did run down the lines through generations. And I was warned, but I remember I was a very perceptive young child, and I always watched people. And I remember being really, really, really interested in the effects alcohol was having on other people, probably as early as I could think for myself. Like I would watch my perception of it anyway. This was my perception of it, with somebody with, I think, an alcoholic mind, was that when they took a drink, like they seemed to get more relaxed. They seemed to be having more fun. The energy shifted in the room, and I wanted a part of that. It looked glamorous, and I was like, I can't wait to do that. And this is probably 3 or 4 or 5. This is as early as I could think for myself. And the second I had that opportunity, I did. And how I felt as a young child, without any real reason to, was I always felt less than. I always felt other than. I felt separate from other people. I was a person who had a lot of love in the home. I always felt safe in my home. I always had a lot of friends. I did well in school. I did well with athletics. I had people, teachers and coaches and, people from religious organizations always tell me that people were attracted to me and that I was a leader. And in my head, I always wondered, what the fuck is wrong with them? Why would they want to be around me? Because I hated myself. Like I was always surrounded by people who loved me, and I always felt completely alone. And when I took that first drink, I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't but at that moment, all those racing thoughts, all that darkness that I thought about myself melted away. It went away. And at that point, it became my number one priority. And literally every decision that I ever made was about protecting my right to do that in the future. Now, this is all in hindsight. I didn't understand any of it. Like I couldn't tell you one thing about what I was thinking, what I was feeling, the effects that the alcohol were having on me, and then I had made that choice to make it my solution. I was so wrapped up in it, and it had gone too far so quickly and grabbed me so quickly that when the consequences started happening and people started saying, hey man, this is an issue, which pretty much happened right away in my early teens, I would wind up in trouble with the law, or I would get into fights. I would end up on the front lawn, or half in the front door and half out of the front door, or under the dining room table at 12, 13 years old. And people would be like, hey, this is a problem. So I think a big piece of this is understanding that those feelings of comparing your insides with other people's outsides, and some of those feelings of feeling less than and separate, is very human and very natural. And it's a
normal thing, isn't it? Very often. And I think it's really important. And I love that you brought up that your childhood wasn't necessarily a traumatic, painful childhood. I often compared myself a lot. And because I come from a similar kind of background, my father certainly had his input into helping me become the man I was through his own behaviors. But generally, I think I identify as coming from this loving family. And then when I got sober, I started to notice some horrific stories, right? So I compared myself, and I think I stayed out there for a few more years because I thought maybe my story wasn't bad enough. But what I do know is, Joe, the minute I got addicted, the minute I found that crutch that was going to make me feel better, I did it like an animal. Like I just went and went and went. I continued to hurt myself over and over again. So yeah, I think it's important to identify that we can compare ourselves to others as much as we like, and we're never going to come off good, are we? It's a human trait. We just never. Well, it's my experience. I don't come off as well when I do that. So I think it's important to acknowledge our own personal journey, why we got here, and what we want from life. You know, and for me, that's total sobriety. You know. Thanks, man. I just thought I'd drop you. Yeah.
So, I think what we're talking about here is like the ego. So, like the ego likes to create separateness and make us unique. And it always positions itself, and this is where the comparing comes in, is when I look at somebody else or I'm surrounded by other people, I automatically position myself in a place of inferiority or superiority.
Yeah.
Separateness, not oneness. Like the idea of common humanity never entered my mind until I was well into sobriety. And that's what I really think the issue is. And that's so if we're going to raise some awareness and about, understanding that's the way a human mind is built. And automatically we're predisposed. There's parts of our brain and our ego mind, which we all have, that always is going to take the stance as inferior or superior. So it's trying to find the commonality in others.
Yeah. Yeah. And balance too, isn't it? Like it's okay. Both of them, I think, are okay. I find them that both those elements can be in a positive way as well. I can learn from it. I can grow from that stuff, and I love to be able to identify when I'm doing that. You remind me of that saying that we've got in recovery. You know it. An egomaniac with an inferiority complex. You heard that, Joey?
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
Well, that's me.
That can be me too. That can be me.
Yeah.
Generally, I think I'm pretty well balanced today. That I don't really allow either way to affect me too much. I try and always bring it back. But I remember in my early days of recovery and trying to get it, the inferiority bit was massive, The ego bit for me personally, I think it's probably egotistical to try and say that I didn't have ego even. But yeah, it was more of that less than,
Yeah, it was for me too. And that's not everybody's story. And not everybody who picks up a drink or drug is an alcoholic or a drug addict. And there's certainly a lot of people that can drink and even, go hard for many, many, many years and it not grab them. That's certainly possible when people have a good reason to stop or moderate. If they're not alcoholic or drug addict, a lot of times they're able to. Even if it goes as far as having some serious medical consequences or legal consequences or relationship consequences, when the doctor might say, hey, you know what, your liver enzymes are a little high. You should probably slow down drinking or stop. And they stop.
And they stop. It's crazy. I mean, I'm sure I was referred many times by a doctor that I had to stop, Certainly an overdose is a good enough indication that maybe you should stop, Danny, because you're going to die otherwise. But yeah, great point. Most people, would you say most people are able to just do that? Stop?
Yeah, I would say probably 90% of the people. 90%. I think the numbers show that it's about 10% of people who actually have the disease of alcoholism. Which is really a general statement. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is your poison is. It doesn't even need to be alcohol and drugs. It could be spending. It could be gambling. It could be sex. It could be overeating. It could be undereating. It could be, who knows? Insert toxic behavior here. In the end, what I think it is I like to call it a hole in the soul. I have this hole in my soul and I will fill it with anything on the outside of me. And it can't be filled with something on the outside. It needs to be filled with something from the inside.
That void, trying to fill that void with, substances or whatever it is outside of ourselves. Joe, just wanted to say hello to Dr. Yvonne and also Patrick. Thanks for joining us, guys. If anyone else is out there joining us, please let us know where you're watching from, and please drop your comments at any time. I remember that, well, and I don't want to get godly here, but that God-shaped hole, it was that hole that I just could not fill with anything else except that internal stuff that I needed to look at, Joey. Patrick mentioned that people can't stop. What did he say? It's totally preventable. Most people can stop. I love that. Most people, which is about 90%, I reckon, Joey.
Yeah, most people probably can. That's where I think the genetic component comes in. But I think it's important, like, even though you may be able to stop or moderate, there may be a whole shitload of wreckage that comes before you do. So I was wondering what you think. Like, you work in the recovery space. I do a lot of service in recovery programs, but you're in that stuff 50 hours a week. So I'm really curious, like, what are some of the signs that if somebody, maybe people might be bringing it to their attention that maybe they're drinking or drugging too much, or they might start having thoughts of, hey, you know what, this might not be normal. I don't seem to do this like other people. Like, what do you think are some of the signs that you might actually have alcoholism or drug addiction? And that, like, if you have some awareness of that, you have an opportunity to stop in time. What I mean is stop in time is like, stop before you lose everything. Stop before you're completely defeated. Stop before you lose your relationships, lose your job, lose your freedom, even lose your life. I'm of the, like, I think, a really big sign is that, like, if you're not an alcoholic or a drug addict and you have to manage your drinking, meaning like, I'm going to have 5 drinks, or it's Wednesday, I have a big meeting tomorrow, I'm probably not going to drink tonight. If you're starting to manage the situation, that's probably a red flag that there's a potential problem. What do you think?
Great point, Joe. It's like, if you're calling it social drinkers don't call it social drinking. They just have a drink. Right. When you start putting a label on it, and I'm going to limit myself to something, often there could be an issue. Hey, Kurt, thanks for jumping on. What do I think? Like, it brings up so much for me. Just so you know, the people that I generally work with in rehabilitation, it's clear evidence to show that they're definitely an addict or an alcoholic. So they've landed there. I think our bottoms, our rock bottoms, definitely come on different levels. And I don't know that you can really put a finger on who's going to have a certain level of that rock bottom. Because, like, for me, example, I spent 17 years in and out of institutions. I identified as having, like, a loving mum. All right, my old man probably taught me a few things that I shouldn't have known, but it wasn't nothing about my history that prevented me from taking that step to stop picking up. It was just the right time for me, So you can't tell. Like, I think it also makes me think of the guy who comes in and he's doing everything. He's doing the prayer. He's doing all the work. He's being very honest. He's helping out all the time. That guy usually doesn't make it either. So, and that's the ego stuff. That's that trying to fill the void. It's not real because we're filling all that time with doing other stuff, and we don't get a chance to look at ourselves. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, I totally do. And sometimes it's baffling. I think the longer I'm in recovery, the less I understand it. Because, sometimes I wonder if it's already in the cards, like who's going to make it and who isn't. Because I've seen people come in who seem into recovery, who seem like people that you're running into, who it's really obvious that they have hit a rock bottom. And not only that, they have the willingness to address it on a daily basis and do what we do in recovery, which nobody wants to do, which really begins with not only not picking up a drink and a drug at a time, we're taking a really good, hard look at ourselves. And then going back and looking at the truth. Recovery is about truth. So it's hard to look at the truth. There's a lot of mechanisms in place, in our brains and part of our souls to protect us from that truth. And so rarely do people take a really good hard look at themselves unless they're forced into it, unless they're torn down or defeated. And I've seen people come in that way, and I've seen people take all the actions and not make it.
Yeah. You can't force it. Yeah. You can't rush it. You can't speed up the process would be. So that thing you're just talking about there, this has been my experience. Like you can like say I come in and I give 100%, to be honest, that's probably only 30%. So what we think is 100% honesty is probably so much more. Like you said earlier, the longer you're around, the less you know. It's kind of like until we really start to understand ourselves and what honesty is, I don't know that you can just come in and be honest. I thought the smallest little things, like for example, just throwing a piece of paper on the ground, I didn't know that was dishonesty. To me, that is dishonesty. So yeah, I think it's hard to put a um, yeah, I had a young man ask me 2 days ago. He was finishing the program, and he asked me, "Do you think I'm like?" Basically, he said to me, "Do you think I'm gonna get it? I'm gonna make it?" And it was a beautiful question. And I think even just asking that shows a level of willingness to want to be a part of this show. And I remember what I said to him was that just having that willingness to ask is certainly a good step, but nobody can pick it, can they, Joey?
No, I mean, it's like I've been wrong so many times. It's like I said, like somebody will come into one of the recovery communities, and I'd be certain that they're done. They've had enough pain. They've had a lot. They had enough consequences. They're willing to take actions that they don't necessarily believe in and do it consistently, and they don't make it. And then there's somebody who comes in who seems like, that like they aren't doing all the right things. They don't
Yes.
think they don't seem like they're defeated, and they do make it.
And they make it, yes. And then there's two different levels of serenity and recovery too, isn't there? Like that's another thing. Like you can have people, and I know quite a lot of people, maybe with 10 years sobriety, but then there's the next level is all right. So they've got that not picking up, and we call it a dry drunk or an untreated addict. So then there's that level of getting serenity, which takes a lot of hard work, Joey.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's certainly sober, removed from your substance of choice is a far cry from holistic functional health.
Yes, so true. It's horrible, actually. Like without the recovery, so sobriety without recovery, and you know what I mean. And if anyone out there doesn't know what I mean that stuff where we start to work on ourselves. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible place to be. That just sober. It's this uncomfortable crawl, horrible feeling of not knowing who you are in the world and how do I fill this void. And yeah, sorry, you just took me off track there. I remember that. That's probably the feeling you get in detox. Because you're not getting any therapy in detox. It's that horrible yuck feeling. And I smile because I just remember those days. And I often talk to people very, very regularly in those phases and just try to, tell them to be brave and wait, hold on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you'll hear a lot in recovery rooms, wait for the miracle, right? Wait for the miracle.
Give time.
Yeah, that too. And like I'm like, be the miracle. Like because if you're breathing and you're alive and you're sober today, you have a shot and you already are a miracle. And you hear a lot also about, a spiritual awakening or a psychic change and what that looks like for other people. And it's, for me, like me not picking up or drinking a drug is like walking on water. That is a flat out miracle.
It's a miracle.
And, I don't know what, defeat looks like for somebody. It's like I was like I had 20 years of, you know, a mountain of evidence pointing to the fact that I was an alcoholic, that I was a drug addict, that I was destroying my life. I had been in many detoxes, I had been in many
Yep.
recovery programs, I've been in rehabilitation centers, I
Same
had
thing.
read the literature,
Me too.
and I could not see it.
No.
Because it was my solution to life, and my every ounce of my being was going to protect that. What not consciously. When after 2 decades of this and the mountain of consequences and overwhelming evidence, if someone would approach me and say, "Look at this! Can't you see this rap sheet? Can't you see what you look like? Can't you see how you're hurting other people?" I thought that they were crazy. That's how powerful it is. I was completely detached from reality. And that's what happens if you have that gene and you cross that line. That's how dangerous it could be. I was separated from reality. That's why they call it insanity. It was clearly insane because I didn't have a grasp on reality. I couldn't see the reality of what I was going through. I couldn't see that I was just I became so far gone immediately. And
Yeah.
I wasn't like in a mental institution drooling on myself. I was functioning in a lot of ways. But as far as that goes, it was a blind spot. And no matter how much evidence you presented in front of me, solutions that you presented in front of me, consequences that I was slammed with, I wasn't giving that up because that was the only way I knew how to live.
Sad, isn't it, Joe? It takes me back. I just think I reflect on some of those times, and I can't. Well, it's like I can't imagine how I could think like that back then. But it was all I knew. That's what it reminds me of. It was all that I knew, and we would. I would fight to the bitter ends to continue doing whatever I need to do to keep myself feeling just like that.
Yeah, it's really is a sickness. So prevention is an important topic, or awareness of when
Sure.
you are definitely there are some red flags and you're heading in the direction of this, because you crossing a line where there's no return. I don't believe that I made a choice to get sober. There was one made for me, and it was like a divine intervention. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have to die in order for us to live. And sometimes you don't get that opportunity to stop the train. Sometimes it grabs you, it's too far, and it's going to end with you in the ground. That's a very real possibility. So creating some awareness of the nature of your thinking, of you comparing yourself with others, of you often taking the position of inferiority or superiority, and reaching out and asking for help. There's a lot of help out there. There's a whole lot more awareness out there. It's important that we are able to not only identify those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, but to communicate them with others, where you'll see like that you're not alone.
For sure. When you stick around for long enough, yes, it takes some time to be able to identify that, but doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I like to look at recovery as like my recovery was kind of a slow and painful recovery. It was just what I needed. I think if it's important that I keep gratitude close and I keep the pain close, and if those two things don't get too far apart, I have a shot today. And early in recovery, when you do a lot of that self introspection work, and that deep work, when you start to look at the truth, or you start to uncover that truth about yourself, it's kind of reminds me of like, you get into the shower and you start to wash off. And the more you wash off, the dirtier you get. And you kind of freak out and throw yourself back out of the shower again, and you take a breather. But the key is to get back into the shower and keep washing. And eventually you wash out all the, you wash all the shit out, and then you could decide, then I get to decide who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? Like,
Yeah,
I don't necessarily believe that I am like that I am uncovering like I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how I had that I got to make a choice of who I am. Like I am what I pay attention to. Like I'm what I do when nobody's watching, and I get to decide what what beliefs I live by. I get to decide what my highest priority values are. Like just the power to choose. That's what recovery gives you. It gives you the power to choose the type of, let's for me, the type of man or type of woman that you want to be. That's a blessing because most of us are just products of our environment, products of our upbringing, um, products of values that are injected through education and media and teachers or religion or whatever. Like we get to choose the path that we want to walk on.
And we can do anything too, you know. um it's been my experience, Joe. Like, and I thought I was so limited to what my life could look like, 11 and a half years ago. I thought, they say in the early days of recovery, make a list of all the things you'd want in 5 years time and you'd be ripping yourself off, and that was exactly how it was for me. And I love that you touched on, for you to keep your sanity, you use that, you keep gratitude and pain close, like what, because it's like, how do we maintain that level of happiness? I need to maintain, well, I love to maintain this level of happiness regularly that keeps me really keen for life, and it keeps me really keen for recovery, and it continues to show me the path ahead, that it's going to get better. I hear people, for example, maybe someone with 20 years sobriety tell me what it's like for them today, right? And I'm a decade behind, and I try and picture myself, and I believe what they're saying, because I go, imagine if what I'm feeling today, and I say all the time, I've got the best life. I'm the luckiest man alive, But I imagine another 10 years time working on ourselves, continuing to dream big, and staying so clean and sober. Imagine what life could be like then. It's the possibilities are endless. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like to dream and I definitely have goals and I definitely know what's possible. It wasn't always like that. And, I think that it like life needs to only happen a day at a time. So, every single day is our life in miniature. So if we could be like, looking at our blessings on a daily basis, like living in integrity, being of service to others, being kind to others. And we just need to do it today. And then tomorrow we commit and do it again. And that compounded over time ends up to a beautiful life. So I really don't need to envision too far down the line. I got to have a big picture, but I need to be concentrating on the little things while I do it, because that's how you get there.
Absolutely, mate. Good stuff, Joe. Mate, and what we talked in the beginning of the show about sharing a little story of gratitude, with our users, and please let us know. We've had a lot of comments from Patrick. You'll get to see them afterwards. And like I also discussed at the time how grateful I was to be moving into my new place and having a second bedroom for my daughter. And 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 that felt like the thing that I was most happiest about. But funny thing, and this is crazy, like after this, it's 1:35 p.m. here in Sydney, but in about an hour and a half I head out to pick up my daughter from school, and that's even so there's nothing. That's what actually makes me the happiest, believe it or not. And do you know, in my early days of recovery, I used to hear people talking about their children, their family, their loved ones, and I used to actually cringe, because I'd spent, let's say, 17 years avoiding intimacy, absolutely. And I honestly thought with all my heart that they were lying, that people were talking about how good it was to see their kids. They were talking about how much they love their families. I thought it was bullshit. I didn't believe it. Isn't that crazy? Like, I truly thought it used to give me creeps, and now today I'm talking about I'm talking about the thing that makes me happiest is because my daughter, she's 3.5, and she just loves it when daddy picks her up. And I told her on the phone this morning, I said, I'm picking you up from school today. And she just starts screaming, running around the house,
Oh,
throwing the toothbrush. And like, it's like she puts it on a little bit, but she's really excited. And then I get there. So I carry that with me all day. And then I know when I pick her up. And then I sit her up on my roof of my car, and I just have a chat with her on the roof like that for a couple of minutes. It's actually the same thing every week, all the time. That it really makes me happy and grateful, mate. What about you, Joe?
what a beautiful gift.
Thanks, mate. It is, right?
The thing about gratitude is it could be generated. And I don't need to be grateful all the time to practice gratitude. However, I can practice it and plug into it. And, there's lots of ways I like to do that. And some of them we've been discussing in previous episodes. But today I just would like to share, like when I was taking my shower this morning, afterwards, I always sit and I list 3 things that I'm grateful for.
Good.
And then I feel my heart open, and I actually close my eyes, and I visualize that force and what it feels like. And to me, it's usually warm, bright light, and it envelops me. And so it's basically, I say 3 things that I'm grateful for. I try to feel my heart open up, and then I feel approached by this force of gratitude. And this morning, what I was really focusing on was my gratitude for my senses, for the ability to see, for the ability to smell, for the ability to taste, for the ability to touch, for the ability to listen, the ability to feel. I am so grateful because that's not the case for everybody. And those are things that I've always had that I take for granted. So that's what I have to be grateful for today.
It's really important to acknowledge that stuff, and we can very easily forget that stuff, can't we, Joey? And it's a great practice to sort of acknowledge that stuff and remember how lucky we are,
Yeah, and then break it down to the rawest level. If I'm grateful to be alive, sober, and in the game today, because that is the absolute foundation for me. I need to be breathing, I need to be sober. You know what I mean? And I need to be in the game of recovery and in the stream of life first and foremost.
It's got to be game on always, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. It's amazing how you and I share a very similar sobriety date, right? We're on the opposite sides of the world, literally. I'm massive fan of America, and certainly New Jersey, and we share this same process around gratitude. I think that's amazing. But hey, before we go, I also you remind me of something too. One of the things I love to do, and I get the opportunity to do this regularly, is I do counseling or supervision. Supervision. Because I work in this space, I have to do counseling once a month. And many years ago, about 8 years ago, Steve was a counselor. He taught me to be the conscious observer, to watch people, just quietly just watch people. And it's been a really wonderful tool that I use all the time. And so almost similar to when you said you sit down and you think about what you're grateful for, I often just observe, okay? And because I'm so grateful for the life I have, it's like I look for distress in other people, and you can't always tell just because you've got a bad head on and that lazy bitch face syndrome that when you've got that angry face, it doesn't mean you're in the horrors. But if you watch people's behaviors, the way they're treating people, can learn a lot. And often if I see someone who I think is in pain, and I'm just going to call it pain, I don't know what it is, I always go up to them and I just give them a smile. I say, hello, how are you? And give them an opportunity to talk. And I know how powerful that is, because I have people come back to me 2, 3, 5 years down the track. In fact, I had someone talking the other night at a meeting I was at, and who reminded me of something that I'd said to him a long time ago. It's such a powerful thing. As human beings in recovery and full of gratitude like me, I can really share my gift with others. And I love to share. In fact, sharing it's what makes me even more happier. So yeah, I love that. I love that recovery has given me the courage to be able to help others in that way.
I mean, it's vital. Like, in order for me to keep it, I need to be giving it away. So
Yeah,
that's part of what we're doing here, and
absolutely.
it's important that if people know that if you are struggling or somebody who's struggling, that there's help, and there's not only one kind of help. There's multiple paths to recovery. So you could reach out to Danny, you can reach out to me, and we could steer you in the right direction because we're plugged into the community.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joey. That's probably the easiest way. Please feel free to send me a direct message. I use the audio feature all the time. Send me an audio message. I will always reply. And um, sometimes when we get to know a bit more information, we can refer to the best places, Joey, and you too. I'm sure you and I have been in contact via DM and audio messages since the beginning.
Yeah, if I don't know, I know somebody who does, and so there's always help, and it's important to be able to ask it and receive it, and to get around people who have a common problem and a common solution.
And sometimes, Joey, and I don't know if you realize how powerful this is, but if someone out there is struggling with addiction or alcoholism or any kind of overdoing of anything, if you're having a chat with someone who has been there, it's so extremely that lived experience. It's so powerful. The things that can happen just in a discussion, like. For example, I know someone who is seeking some help, and I've known him for quite some time, but we've only just started talking about my story, and it's just made a dramatic difference. So, don't ever underestimate the power of that lived experience.
Yeah, like they say, identify, don't compare. Like,
Mm.
there's you don't need to that's one of the things that kept me out there for so long, because you can always find somebody worse. Like, I'm not as bad as that guy. You know what I mean? And where that wound me was like you talk about getting one of the gifts of recovery is being able to buy a home. You're able to buy a home today. Like, in 2009, I was living in the park.
Oh,
Danny and I were joking before, like,
yeah.
it's like I need to remember that, like, what it was like. That's where keeping the pain close. I need to remember that, like, the fact that I have a driver's license with my name and my picture on it. I have a car. I have car insurance.
Yeah.
That's a miracle. And I don't want. And the more stuff I get, and the more well I get, and the more I grow, I need to remember that, like, if I don't treat my disease on a daily basis, if I'm not helping others along the same path, that's where I'm going to end up. And I only get one step ahead of it. I can only do it 24 hours a day at a time. I don't gain on it. I don't bank meetings. I don't bank years of recovery. I get today. And when I wake today, my number one priority needs to be, my recovery. And I don't think I'll never be absolved from that. Like, I don't care if you have 1 year, 20 years, it's done a day at a time. And all I need to do is let my guard down a little bit, and it's waiting to pounce. And I can easily convince myself that a drink or a drug might be a good idea.
Do not ever get complacent, Joey. Mate, it's been a great discussion. It's been a lot of fun. Wonderful topic. I've really enjoyed it, Joey. Thank you, everyone who's watched. Thank you for the comments and engagement. Also, Joey, we'll see you guys next week.
Next week, man. This is a lot of fun. Thank you for anybody who's participating. And if you are somebody who is struggling, you could start by reaching out to us.
Kurt's dropped a comment. He loved it. Good on you, Kurt. Mate, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get a guest on the show next week, Joey.
Yeah, I got some good guests lined up. We're going to get somebody. We'll post that out soon. Let people know when that's going to be. And
Patrick keeps spreading the solution, guys. Peace out. Patrick's been very engaged in the show. And thank you, everyone else, who tuned in. Yeah, let's
Yeah, I
do that.
can't see the comments. I'll check them out later.
Yeah, you have to take a look, mate. All right,
Thank
guys.
you, everybody. Thank
Stick
you.
around,
Thank you,
Joey.
Danny.